All right, guys, we're entering into part 3 here on the Racyst website, realhistoryww.com, which doesn't have any or much real history on it. It does have some, though, and it's one of the reasons that I'm going to continue with these is because he goes now into ancient Neanderthals and all that type of stuff, and you just have to read through it and pick out the part where he keeps throwing in, they were black, and it ends up being more correct. So it's got good info in it, and I'd like for you to notice that, but I'm going to have to just shatter his crap here in a minute. So Grimaldi migration to Europe is what we're looking at right here. The Grimaldi migrations to Europe. Sometime about 4500 BC, the great glacial ice sheets that covered most of Europe started to melt, and a group or groups of these non-Khoisan type peoples walked across the Gibraltar Straits and entered Europe. This marks the first time in human history that modern humans have crossed over into the formerly frozen wilderness of Europe. Once in Europe, Grimaldi man continued his migrations and came to eventually inhabit all of Europe and northern Asia. The easternmost limit of his range appears to have been the settlement known as Malta in Siberia, Russia, just north of Mongolia. Now, it's strange that he has all of this because let's just pop his bubble on this Grimaldi man thing. I'm about sick of Grimaldi. Grimaldi was a black person. Grimaldi man. Well, Grimaldi man is the name formerly given to two human skeletons. Two human skeletons. So I don't know how he gets all over everything and all these migrations out of two skeletons that are found right together. That's wow. Look how he's a Gnostic. He do. Grimaldi man is formally given to two human skeletons of Upper Paleolithic discovered in Italy in 1901. The remains are now recognized as representing two individuals and are dated circa 26,000 to 22,000 years ago and classified as part of the wider European early modern humans. Not negroids. Early can't even quite get the head in there, but yeah, early modern humans. Population of the late Aurignacian and Gravettian people. So these were the cavemen people that led into Cro-Mags, and these were variations on a theme of Caucasoids. And I believe this one is non-extant. It means it kind of disappeared, kind of went away, kind of melted in a little bit into some people perhaps, but it wasn't a Negro, never melted into anybody. Because of their early discovery, there is a long history of interpretation of the fossils. Notably, the remains were originally classified as Negroid by Boulay and Valois in 1921. This identification has been obsolete since at least the 1960s, but it was controversially revived in the 1980s as part of the Afrocentrism propagated by Sheikh Anta Diop. Busted. One set of fossils, they ain't nowhere. So let's just, look, I'm just break it down. Let's do this one for you. It was one Negroid family that made it up into somewhere, and then they die off of weed. But they are non-extant, and it doesn't matter, and so on. But hold on, they're not Negroids. He just told you that they weren't. Let's look at this a little bit more here. They found reindeer remains, all kinds of stuff around them. One of the two skeletons belonged to a woman past 50. The other adolescent boy, 16 or 17. The skeletons were in remarkable good shape, though the weight of some 8 meters in sediments had crushed the skulls down somewhat, particularly the finer bones of the face. Yet Villeneuve was reportedly struck by the prognathicism of the skulls, which were crushed, with the crushed natures of the skulls, such observation would have been tentative at best. It was, however, later established that the old woman was indeed prognostic, though from a pathological condition called an underbite, and that he had mishinged her jaw in the wrong place in the first place, and he tried to put it all together out of puzzle pieces. And people are saying no, and it didn't have the thing. So anyhow, So the dating techniques were limited at the time, but Grimaldi people were believed to be in the late Paleolithic period. An interference of the true age can be made from layering. More tropical fauna of the lower levels of Grimaldi men's skeletons had rhinoceros, hippopotamus, and elephants, and are known from the Mousterian Pluvial and post period from 50,000 to about 30,000 years before present. So even then, their nation is 47,000 to 41,000 year old and most recent calibration of the radio timescale, with Grimaldi skeletons situated at the lowest Aurignacian layer. The true age is likely in the earlier ages, right? Now, what gave them the idea? The Grimaldi skeletons were very different from finds that had just been unearthed in Europe until then. Unlike the robust Neanderthals, the Grimaldi skeletons were slender and gracile, even more so than Cro-Magnon finds from the same cave system. The Grimaldi people were small, while an adult Cro-Magnon generally stood over 170 centimeters tall, so over 6 foot. And then they say that these Grimaldi guys were like 5'4", 5'6", and here again I'm talking about the hobbity type of people and the giants, and there were giants in the land in those days, and it has nothing to do with negroids. The two skulls had rather tall brain cases, unlike the long, low skulls found in Neanderthals and lesser extent in Cro-Magnons. So the faces had wide nasal openings and lacked the rectangular orbit and broad complexion, so characteristics of the Cro-Magnons. Now these traits, combined with what Villeneuve interpreted as prognathicism instead of just an underbite, led the discoverers to conclusion that Grimaldi men had been of a negroid type. Some traits didn't fit the picture, though. The nasal bone had a high nasal ridge, which is not with negroids. Like that of Cro-Magnons and modern Europeans, it was unlike a European trait. Their cranial capacity was also quite large for their size, and that's something not noticed even in any negroid skull at all. It's over the size. So it looked like something that was in between. It has nothing to do with it. And so they go on down here, museum displays and things like that, but no. So let's see. The diagnosis of the prognosum in adolescence is here speculative, artificial, and possibly intentionally created. Based on these characteristics, Boole and Verneau concluded that the two specimens were negroid. Other non-negroid characteristics were disregarded by them. The fact that no similar finds were ever known from Europe and did not raise any concern to them either. It was believed that more would be to follow. The problem is that none have ever followed, and it's the only two that have ever happened. Now I want to show you something here. Here's a photo from 1916. So this is it right here. I'm going to go in on these skulls here just a little bit for you, and you can see that. Now I want you to notice the little triangular nostril hole. You really can't tell on her, but do you notice how her jaw is slung way forward? You see that? See how her jaw's like gar? Right? Well, he went and he had to use that and everything. The problem is that this little back part right here is supposed to set right about here. And even though if you put it back there, she still has an underbite. Her bottom teeth are out farther than her top teeth. Big deal. Well, what's such a big deal to these people is all of these people that we're finding over in northern Africa and stuff all had an overbite a little bit. A lot of the Egyptians had an overbite a little bit, and she had an underbite. Well, there are people nowadays that show up with underbites, but is that like, oh, all these people had underbites if you find one? Well, he thought they'd find a whole bunch more, and so he put out this thing. Well, it got debunked and ruined then. And by the 1960s, it had been brought up and debunked so many times over and over again that it was like, okay, and they figured out that it was non-extant and it disappeared. Well, it popped back up with Negrocynics saying, oh, look, it's negroids. Well, I want you to look at that nasal hole opening and see how it's a little triangle? See how it's a little triangle, right? Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're just going to go look at the difference between a Caucasian and a negroid skull. And I think you're going to be an expert here all of a sudden here. Let's look at a modern Caucasian and negroid skull. Now, the one on the right that has the triangle that looks just like what we just looked at is a Caucasian. And the one on the left that has the round hole, I mean, it looks almost like a shovel end or something, or a spade, that is a negroid. And so you can see the difference of the two. Oh, and neato. the guy on the right's a 38,000-year-old skeleton. The one on the left is a recreation of the one from 9,100 years ago. It's actually not even a modern negroid, it's a proto-negroid. Yep, they were proto back then, whereas the one on the right is considered a modern human skeleton. And he's fixing to show you that actually it goes back farther than that. While he's trying to debunk that, he debunks himself by 315,000 years. But let's take a look at that. Where are we at now that we find out Grimaldi Man isn't all over the place? Grimaldi Man is maybe in one place, two skeletons. As earlier stated, many anthropologists, researchers, and academics still refuse to acknowledge that the Africans were the first human colonizers of Europe. You know, we'll acknowledge that. It just won't be a negroid, because that would be a lie. And no one wants to live by a lie. Well, I guess some people want to live by a lie, but no one in their good right mind. Oh, I'm sorry, that's wrong again too. How about, well, let's just go. To hide this fact, they prefer to use the terms Aurignacian and Gravettan cultures. Well, we established all these different cultures and the slight variations, and they've given them names. Adam is the guy that names everything, just like in the Bible. Such as the cave paintings at Chauvet, France. Not far from where Grimaldi entered Europe. Picture of this on the left to the humanoid Cro-Magnon is an always mystifying. First, Cro-Magnon was not a fully modern human. Whites then describe Cro-Magnon as an archaic human, meaning characteristic of an earlier or more primitive human. He was actually a later hybrid human. Modern man is much older than the hybrid Cro-Magnon and Neanderthal. So hold on. He has to say modern man's older. We've talked about this recently. You see, now, whenever we were kids, we thought just 6,000 years ago, and that's considered not modern man. But to grab everybody on the planet, we have to actually include Cro-Magnon and stuff, because certain people only had that level of living and technology. So if we want to say everybody's a modern human, join hands, then we have to say that. Well, what's sad is that didn't quite line up exactly like he's saying right there. And therefore now they've attached it just to Homo sapiens sapiens, and Ibn Jarud shows Homo sapiens sapiens at 315,000 BC now. And that's to make up to the oldest common negroid people that we found at about 4,500 BC. The oldest proto-negroid is at 9,100 BC, but the oldest common or current negroid, you can look this up, I mean, prove me wrong, you know, and don't start pointing at Khoisan and things that aren't related to West African Negroes that are trying to put out this stuff here. The negroid itself, what we really know is that, not a Khoisan, not some, no, we're not going to, and you're not going to say you're up in Europe and doing this type of crap. Beautiful cave art though over here, guys. I'd like to blow it up here a little bit and just take a little look at that right there. There's an elephant. Now where we're at, we're in France. There's an elephant. There's a huge mama rhino. There's a baby rhino. There is a gazelle. There is a baby rhino. There is a colt horse, an older horse, and an adult horse. There's 3 bulls here on the wall. Some of these paintings, though, and ones that I've famously showed you, show a bull on the wall, and they show you these dots that are with it, and if you'll look at it, it actually is Taurus. And then there's Orion over here, and there's other dots on the wall. And I don't know if you can make it out, but you see on the wall that light gleam that's right there? That light gleam is the sun coming through. And on the wall over here to the right, if the picture would have been about 2 inches wider, there's some dots right there. And those dots indicate the far right point that the sun comes in winter, and the far left point it comes in it's really like a solstice. It's spring and fall. It's a solstice, so it looks like the solstice numbers because they have 2 dots in between there. So it's kind of like here, and here's the solstice, and there, and here's the solstice, and there. The problem with that is they date this stuff back at 40,000 years ago, and then people are realizing what the apex of the solstices are, at least at that time. Seasons. I think it's kind of amazing, but let's continue with this. But he did show you there that he says himself, modern man is much older than those hybrids of Cro-Magnon and Neanderthal. Now, what he doesn't realize is that all of a sudden doesn't encompass his people anymore. But so then the white myth goes like this. The fully modern human, Grimaldi, enters Europe at about 45,000 BC, and then he sits around doing nothing for 10,000 years. I'm going to stop right there. No, the white myth goes 315,000 years. They were all over North Africa and Nibelgerud caves and all up into Europe and stuff, and it looks like the out of Africa theory's busted. Okay, let's continue. Then about 35,000 BC, the archaic humanoid Cro-Magnon enters Europe, and then he immediately sets about creating the most magnificent art known to ancient man. All the while, modern man Grimaldi, he's black, you know. No, he's not. Sits around doing nothing. It is from these magnificent Cro-Magnons that white people later evolve, wanting to be agreeable. Okay, that would work, but providing Cro-Magnons were idiot savants, a person affected with a mental or music order, disability such as autism or mental retardation who exhibits exceptional skill or brilliance in some limited field. That's terrible that he says, wow, if cavemen could draw, then they must be a savant. Well, no, but you look at negroids today and you'd say if one gets above 105 OQ, it's almost a savant situation. You look at somebody like Neil deGrasse Tyson and you say, that's a unicorn right there. That's a unicorn. That's a man who knows damn good and well blacks were a primitive just recently, but look at what I've done with myself. And I think he sits around at nighttime going, gosh, look how smart I've become. I think he's amazed at himself, and not in a big egotistical way in any shape or form, but just amazed at looking at other black people and what they're doing and how much they've gone and going, wow, yeah, if I could pat him on the back, I would. He needs to pat himself on the back just for going that extra mile and not going, what? No, never getting caught up in the bullshit. But also he had to already start with a brain capable of doing that. So he's a savant. So then, providing Cro-Magnons were idiot savants, what he says. So, Cro-Magnon, like Grimaldi, was a black African. No, hold on. But of course, that still doesn't settle the racial issue because, though thought different, Cro-Magnon, like Grimaldi, was a black African. Oh, no, Negro, we're not going to go with that. And as we shall see, they didn't turn into white Europeans, as some laughably suggest. No one suggests that. They were always Caucasians. The light skin gene goes back 600,000 years and is a blanket over humanity at 65,000 years. I've got a paper on that they wrote. I did a vid on it. So, no, in fact, it seems the black skin thing is a specialized deal. Just like in gorillas and bonobo, it's that weird thing. It's not the norm. They want to act like it's the norm, and somehow whites is albino Negroes. That's this guy. So, as we shall see, they didn't turn into white Europeans, as some suggest, but it's how white people handle that minor little detail. No, black people handle the minor little detail that they're not involved by trying to involve themselves with lies. It's kind of disgusting, and by kinda, I mean a lot. Newspaper headlines, European skin turned pale only recently, genes suggest. And that's whenever they didn't figure it out right, and that's some loca gene that they didn't have figured out yet and did everything to do with it. See this lady over here with a fat ass? That's stytopedia, and we'll probably have to show you a different thing onto that, but there's a whole thing that I could do on that, and a lady that was in Europe in ancient times that displayed herself as being basically a circus oddity. And the idea of whether or not she wanted to do it, and she made more money than most people did back then, and they took her to court and she said, yeah, I've been doing this, I'm making more money than you. It's a high degree of fat accumulation that they have like this, and it's when you got that big ass on you. And I just want to cut to the chase here. What he's going to try to say is, you know that those statues I've been showing you for a long time now of the fat Venus, and how she's real fat, and that they actually draw a little slight, let's be delicate here, camel toe type effect on her and so on. But she's a big woman, she's a mama, and how I showed you some of those statues show females that are regular sized, which would be just like a princess or a woman, but then there's the mama situation, right? and how mothers were deified and how that was looked at as being, you know, mother of all creation and things. And you want to keep her fat, you want to keep her healthy. It's a sign that things are doing good. She doesn't just get sick and die real easy. She can stand it. She's a mother. And nowadays it's kind of sick that we look at women that whenever they have a few kids and they get some weight on them afterwards, and they hearken to where they want to be that young princess again. And it's, no, you should take pride in the fact that you've become that mama, you know, and stuff. And Stylopedia you find in all kinds of people. Honey, honey, boo boo, and all those ladies have this big old womp ass onto them and stuff. My grandma had quite a set of hips on her, not to give it up, grandma, but so he's going to try to say that Venus and the Venus statues that you find all over Cro-Magnon and Neanderthal stuff coming all the way up and things were taken there somehow by Grimaldi Negroes. Okay? Tracking Grimaldi, Statophagia is a high degree of fat accumulation around the buttocks, extending to the outside front of the thighs, forming a thick layer, sometimes to the knee, and constitutes a genetic characteristic of some Khoisan females. It's also been noted among the pygmies of Central Africa and Animas Negritos of the Andaman Islands. It's also been noted on the people of Punt, those Caucasian Egyptians, when they went and visited their friends, and that lady in one of the things, and they say, oh, she must have had Stylopegia. Right? And by the way, in Greek, Statophagia, state, it means to render fat. It's rendered fat. And then pegia means a rump or your butt. And so basically, Stylopegia means fat ass. Right? While Khoisan afford the most notable examples of its development, by no means rare in any parts of Africa. And that's true. There are certain tribes in Africa that want the women fat and the men small, and if you look, due to them doing that so long, they have small men and big old fat women and all these things and stuff. So it shows you genetics can happen over time, and it shows you evolution in small matters like this can happen over time and just happen naturally. They're not doing anything over and above to extra do it or anything like that. But Grimaldi Khoisan's admiration for Statophagia females, together with their great artistic ability, will provide artifacts that are great aid in tracking their migrations across Europe and Asia. Well, they never made it there, so you can't track anything like that. Not all Grimaldi figures are Statophagia. Oh, really? Some are of normal proportions and some are ample proportions, but not truly Statophagia. You're going to find that most of the statues, in fact, all of the Venus statues, aren't really quite Statophagia that they call the negroids now and stuff. The negroids got it so bad, they're like, that's worse. This is that genetic condition. It's what it is, a genetic condition. So, because next we're going to go into racism, so I don't know. Let's look at Statophagia. Let's look at that here real quick. Just we're not getting anywhere fast here, are we? So there's Grimaldi man, right? And that's that skinny skeleton there, and we just figured out the difference. And just for fun, look at that skinny nasal aperture. Okay. And so let's see if we can go back to Statophagia. Oh, there's another picture here of the same ones, and it's the same ones laid out, and he still has the skinny nose. Yep. And his non-negroid features. So here's Statophagia, right? And they tell you here that they have oh, there it is. Greek steep meaning tallow or fat, and pugae meaning rump, so fat butt. Okay, let's see. Just the Khoisan do other things where they actually cater to it and try to make it worse in their women all the way up to the first time that they have their very first pregnancy here. And I'll show you something about that in a second. It has been suggested that the feature was once more widespread Paleolithic Venus figurines, somewhat referred to as Statophagian Venus figures, discovered from Europe and Asia, representing a remarkable development of thighs and the buttocks, and prolongation of the labia minora, may have been suggested to support this theory, although it's intended lifelike or exaggeratory, even realistic or whatever, and it seems unclear. Well, no, it doesn't seem unclear to these people that study this. It's a fertility symbol whenever you see the Venus ones, and of course we know Venus, and this is the fertility symbol. It's done differently here, although these people love big butts or whatever, so they went with that, and we all understand that concept. It's funny, when I was a kid, ladies used to go around going, "Did this pants make my butt look fat?" Now they seem to want to try to get a chunkier butt. It goes back and forth and back and forth. Whenever my mom was little, they wanted women to be a little bit more rotund and have some meat on them. Then it got skinny. Then we went to a waif look of like Twiggy and all of that stuff. Now we're back to where it's a real confusing time, where they all have these 15-year-old people walking up and down that don't have boobies or nothing yet, walking up and down a runway, and then they have fat older women looking at it and wanting to look like that for some reason, and it just fucks them up. So anyhow, these Venus figurines, though, don't have a lot to do with that. But let's look at this here, this elongated labia effect. Now this is where the Khoikhoi people, whose females members develop relatively elongated labia minora, hanging up to 4 inches outside their vulva when they are standing up or in an upright position. The apron, they call it, was an apparently gained from the tendency of early European descriptions to misidentify the pair of labia as a single wide organ, which they called French tabellia, or an apron, when it is more like a butterfly. In fact, labia has something to do with that. So anyhow, in this it talks about Sarah Bartman, and that's what I could do a whole video on, was this black woman, Khoisan lady, who you can tell she's not drawn that dark here, and Khoisan aren't that dark, but she was put on exhibit as being a native and someone that's just quite an oddity and something that was quite different. Now what's funny about things like this is you see this Elizabethan England woman here with a fat butt on her too, and she's not too much different herself, except for she doesn't have that lump effect. It's that lump effect that's really more. And if you'll look, see how they draw it coming straight off her back? It literally was straight off. Some of the comical pictures show you people setting a glass of something to drink on her butt, or somebody sitting, or like a baby sitting up there and things like that, because it actually comes straight off of her. And it's because her back becomes bent. It's like she's sticking her butt out, but it's the way it's bent naturally. Then you have the giant butt on the top of it and everything. So it's a little different. It's a little bit different, but yeah, this practice that they do here of having this, I don't know if you can see that picture, but wow. So yeah, let's just go back here. So anyhow, these people do this thing where they prop their twat out to where it ends up being this big flap thing or whatever and stuff, and I don't think that's what we're talking about Caucasians doing in any way either. And so this whole idea is something that's different they've got going on and shouldn't be confusing the two. So where are we at now? Hitting 28. Let's go ahead and try to pull this off right here. While reading through this page, the subsequent pages on the site, the thought must come, where are the lifelike images of the supposedly black prehistoric ancient people? Logically, if they could paint lifelike images of bulls, such as cave paintings in Chauvet, France from early 3200 BC, then certainly they could have painted lifelike images of themselves and made lifelike figures too. So where are they? That brings us to the crux of the matter: white racism. It's not known exactly when racism became institutionalized in white people, because through careful hidden the founding white civilizations, the Hellenes continuation of the black Greek civilization, and the Latin continuation of the black Etruscans and black Celtic Gaul civilizations were extremely biracial. But there's just no genetics that show that it ever happened, or not a single skull. It's amazing what these people did. And the biracial nature of the European society continued well into the Middle Ages and beyond, at which times many of the noble families of Europe were still black or mixed race. What a joke, whenever we just found that black people are a circus sideshow all the way through the Middle Ages, isn't it? In fact, it kind of shows it in his own site, but then he's like, blacks were all over the place, and blacks were Greeks. Now, what did he say? Celtics, Gauls, blacks is everybody. Everybody except for West African primitives. They can't be that. They have to be anything but that. So he wants you to look here at mixed race, that they're mixed race. So let's just click the top one here to go for funsy Click here for mixed race tomb paintings from early white Rome. Mixed race. Okay, so here's another one of his pages here. Etruscan and Tarka. Okay, so let's look here. Here's these tombs that were built out of these megalithic stonework, and if you'll look, they're the old style where they're all men together. Isn't that amazing? Yeah, and I've shown you some of these, and what these are is the next step of Kurgan burials. If you look how round this one is, it's like a step up from that, so you can tell that has a lot to do with that, and he kind of spoils it a little bit, but that's something I have coming up with these guys. And then we have the Hittites, and how they came in a little bit later, and that's another wave that comes through of these people. But so biracial, that's funny. I'm getting some little blonde-haired person here on a horse, and then here's another blonde-haired person standing here. Okay, so surely there's going to be some black people. I don't know what he's talking about. Oh, maybe up here. Up here we have a fertility symbol, and there's a tanned man and a light woman, and he's having sex with her here. And then there's a bull fertility. Too bad we can't get close on that, because I believe when we look at the bull, it has a human face, and this kind of shows you that they don't. Oh, there it is. If you look, it's kind of got a human face and even like an Egyptian makeup thing onto it, and he's got stripes and an Egyptian cowl, and this is really just a worship thing. And if you'll look at the crosses that are here and the sacred apples that are planted in a little garden, and how there's a woman here and she's being humped, and he tried to say it's a black person, but if you'll look, he's blonde, long blonde hair. She's got reddish brown hair. Yeah, we're not going to be able to call that mixed race. Oh, here again's a blonde-haired guy with a lady bent over. And here's the bull. Bow, chicka, down, down. And here's some more exciting sex with tanned people and real pale people. And here's a bunch of Kurgan mounds and stuff in the Etruscan metropolis. Isn't that amazing? The little Kurgan burials. So just all you got to do to make this go away is bury it all the way in a mound. And I wonder how many places on earth there are these type things with people still in them, and their riches and their things buried under a little mound. Like nobody knew Göbekli Tepe existed till somebody stumped their toe and said, "What?" Yep, beautiful. Look at these. Look at this tomb that's out in here and how it's excavated out, and all this inner stonework built into. That's amazing. Amazing Caucasians, incredible. You look at these and how they have the tombs, and instead of doing the Egyptian thing, how they put an effigy of them on top of it and slab, and it's actually cut into pieces and then put onto there. And you can tell how people didn't, it was so heavy to get the tops off to bust into them, they busted holes in the side. Look at that. Oh yeah, look at these negroids here with the blonde-haired, long-haired man, and then his real pale wife next to him. I'm not sure. He did say there was going to be mixed people here, didn't he? Oh, well, here's a sacrifice of the Trojan captives.